to the course. My name is Fuad, and this video series will help you understand your reading material, assessment, and health professionals education. Now I'll point out to you in this series what's important, what's not so important. So let's go right to it.
Okay, what follows is a series of discussions regarding constructed response items, right? So this begins in page 113, right? This is in page 113. Okay, where the author starts off by discussing when do you want to use short answer and when you want to use long answer formats. Basically, as we have discussed previously, the short answer you sample more, and therefore if you want a more reliable results, you would go for short answer questions because you can sample more, right? And but it does mean that the sampling is just at the surface. Probably ask them to define, ask them to just things which you can ask students to write in a short time. Okay, so it says that permits a broader sampling of content. More questions can be asked and answered, and the reliability of the content is thus improved. Right, so it's what we're saying here. However, says if the purpose of the test is to sample a narrow domain, you want to see just a narrow domain, just a very specialized topic, for example, and you want the answers to be detailed, and deep. You want to test how deep, how much do they know, the minute details depending on your objectives. Then you would go for long answer questions. Okay, so that is the gist of the first discussion regarding constructed response items. The second discussion about constructed response items is regarding scoring rubrics. What do we mean by scoring rubrics? What we mean is that a guide for raters, for lecturers to give marks for the questions. Now, bear in mind, I think you are familiar in Malaysia. What happens usually, most of the time, is that the lecturer prepares an answer key. Answer key, as the name states, is a list of what answers to look for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and most of the time this is the only thing which is supplied. And what happens is that the lecturer now hunts for these answers in the candidate's answer sheet. There's one there. So this is one answer sheet, answer script from the candidate. Then says, oh yes, there's one there. There's one there. Okay, there's one there. So okay, he got three marks. And then maybe he will say 3 out of 10. Okay. So this is the answer key. The answer key is necessary, but it focuses just on the content. Of the answer. What about the other things? Okay, so that is what is usually lacking in the essay scoring exercise in Malaysia. Okay, now how we score actually what is recommended is that we produce also rating scales. Okay, rating scales can be either global scoring or analytical scoring. Right, so it means, for example, if you want to give marks for the candidates, you have a scale of, let's say, excellent, good, borderline, poor. Okay, you give a mark here, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now that's a scale. Okay, so you can attach definitions of what is excellent, what is good, what is borderline, what is poor. Okay, and this definition can change according to the domain of the answer. So now you can direct the rater's attention to maybe, of course, content. So excellent, you might describe all points written, provided. Okay, good is most points. Borderline is nearly half points. Okay, poor is no point or very few points. Okay, but now you can go more than just content. You can describe, for example, logic of argument. So for excellent, you can give the definition, what you mean by a good logic in the argument, and maybe you can say uses references, quotes references well, whatever. So you can give the definition here, and the definition of good maybe not as good as the one in excellent, but you give quotes some references, for example, etc., etc. What is borderline, what is poor. So you can have as many domains as you think are important. So you can go for content, you can go for argument, you can go for language. Okay, so that's what is recommended when we score an essay. Okay, so if you just have a look at all the overall answer and give the judgment, we call this as global scoring. But if you are directed to domains, for example, the content, the logic of argument, you look at the language and handwriting. So you have these domains, we call it as analytical scoring. Okay, you can have so another type or another feature of the rating is either you have a Likert type scoring, or you can have a behaviorally anchored rating scale, or the bars. Okay, you can have a look at table 7.3 in page 115 for an example of a bars. So in the bars, there is actually the scale and the description of a scale, the name. Okay, and now you have the domains. So in the example, it says that the factual accuracy and the structural relationships and the writing. It happens to be an anatomy question, for example. Okay, for the scale, you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Description 5 is excellent. You have good, satisfactory, marginal, unsatisfactory. So the author then describes what under fact, what is excellent, what is good, what is satisfactory, what is marginal, and under structural relationships, what is the definition or the behavior that is required, as well as in the writings. Please have a look at the table. Okay. That is in terms of the scoring, and therefore do we go for holistic scoring or general, the what we call here as the global scoring, or we want to go for analytic scoring? So the last part, if you look at page 115, the paragraph just above the table, the author gives a guideline on whether you want to use holistic scoring or analytical scoring. Okay, holistic means global, right? Global rating versus analytical. So if you want to just have an opinion and you have expert raters, then you go for global scoring or holistic scoring. Okay, this is more popular actually. Global judgment, experts global judgment. But if you use a holistic scoring or global scoring, then feedback would be less detailed. Okay, because you do not have the domain in how do you do in this in this area, that area. Okay, that is not available. All right. Whereas if you go for analytical, the feedback detail is higher, but of course it needs more time to go through and use a analytical scoring. Okay, it says here, analytic scoring methods may permit feedback to test takers on more specific aspects of performance. However, you need more time, and also it says here, many of the separate characteristics rated in analytic methods may correlate highly with each other. For example, if you have too many domains, right, they are most probably not that different from one another. So if you do well in domain A, you also do well in domain B. So the logic is, then why do you need two domains? You can just have one domain. Okay, and things like that. Okay, so the discussion here, you have a look. And lastly, the author mentions that how to go about writing the scoring method. Okay, the test developer should begin by generating a model answer. Okay, first you begin with model answer, or what we call here the answer key. So this is the first step. Often this is the only step, but actually this is the first step. Then it says this model answer should be reviewed for accuracy. So second step is to review by others, and the accuracy and completeness by other content experts. Okay, So you go to look at the completeness or not, the objectivity of the standardization, length of the rating scale, description of each point, how well is the description for each point, and things like that. Okay, so you come up with the model answer, you review, so you review the model answer as well as the rating scale, whether it's you use the bars or you use Likert scales, etc., etc. So okay, so that's the discussion of this section. Okay, there's an interesting discussion in page 116 about human raters of CR tasks. Okay, where it is very important for us to remember that if you use paper-based assessments where you need human judges, so we're talking about the CR formats, the constructor response formats. Whenever you start to need judges, you have to think about rating, about training. So why is it important? Because humans have flaws in thinking. Okay, so here we say that what are the best practices for training raters include, so we ensure that they are properly recruited. So best practices, they're recruited based on their content expertise and their qualifications linked to the task in the question, and 3, a clear training process. Okay, what kind of training process? So you need to introduce them to the question, introduce them to the answer keys, introduce them to the rubric if you have any, and you have to decide and tell them about what is the definitions used, so that everybody is clear. Okay, so that's part of the training. Okay, and he also talks about rater biases, and this is not just for essay exams, it's any examinations which requires observers, human judges. So things like halo effect, it's mentioned there, leniency versus severity bias, what is that? It's mentioned there. Central tendency effect, or central restriction. Okay, these are part of the few other things mentioned here. So what we need to do is to remember about best practices in preparing the rater for construct response items, and also we have to remember what are the rater biases that has been documented: the halo effect, the leniency, severity bias, the central tendency. So read this up, and it's good if the raters are aware of these biases so that they can take efforts to reduce them. Okay. The author then follows with a short discussion of computer-based ratings. Computer-based ratings, just a short one, and I think this is nice to know for you, because I do not think that it is available in Malaysia. Okay, just have a look. We continue with CR items, the discussion on CR items, and in this section the discussion is on the threats to score validity. This will be a common trend, and when we are discussing all the paper based, the observer based, the workplace based assessment types, we will, as much as possible, have a section where we discuss the threats to validity, right? So in CR items, what are the main threats to validity? One is construct underrepresentation. What does that mean? That means that it has reduced sampling. We have to remember that if we use CR items, constructor response items, short answer questions, long answer questions, essays, traditional essays, the sampling is very much a problem, because we are getting less samples of the candidates' competencies in the areas, in the content areas, compared to other formats. Okay, how to overcome that? As much as possible, we increase the sampling. Where it is justified, we can favor short answer questions over long answer. And if you are not looking for detail in answering, the logic behind answering, argument skills and things like that, then just go for select response item formats. Okay, so sampling is one threat to score validity if you use CR formats. So it's always a matter of balance between use and between limitations. And don't forget, always one of the best options or best solutions is to combine formats. So you have some essay questions, some perhaps objective questions. So this needs to be carefully thought out so that you can have best of all worlds, right? Let's go to the second type of threat to score validity: construct irrelevant variance. I hope you still remember what all these things mean in the earlier classes. Okay, construct irrelevant variance means problems in the question which are not related to the construct. Okay, and of course one of the causes of the CIV is that the lack or the reduced objective scoring here. Reduced objective scoring. Whenever we use human raters, that is what happens. Okay, so we need to take care to reduce this. Okay, that is why whenever we are using constructed response items, we emphasize training, we emphasize using rubrics and things like that. Those are the actions to overcome this threat. Okay, and the author also reminds us one other factor causing CIV is bluffing, and he gives a few examples of what is bluffing in essays. For example, restating the question. This is done by candidates. They do not have any idea what to answer. They are lost. So what they do, instead of just handing in a blank piece of paper, they will write something. Sometimes they restate the question, they beat around the bush, but sometimes if they have good language skills, good English for example, they can write bombastic things which doesn't mean anything, but the rater might be fooled and say, oh, this guy knows something, so he will get marks which is not actually which do not actually belong to him. Okay, so whenever that happens, you introduce error in the marks, and therefore you reduce the validity of your examination. Okay, so that is the discussion regarding CR items.